Did you actually type the words code red? I just think about that moment where you're like, all right, I'm going to hit the C and the O. I'm saying these words. Do you think you can get people to come to Stack Overflow directly and seek out answers from other people? Or are they just going to talk to the AIs?
You don't trust something because you don't think it's producing high integrity answers. You may not trust it because it may replace you.
Hello and welcome to Decoder. I'm Nilay Patel, editor-in-chief of The Verge, and Decoder is my show about big ideas and other problems. Today I'm talking with Prashanth Chandrasekar, who is the CEO of Stack Overflow. I last had Prashanth on the show in 2022, 1 month before ChatGPT launched. It was more or less immediately clear how big a deal ChatGPT was going to be. He called the company emergency, reallocated about 10% of the staff to figure out solutions to the ChatGPT problem, and made some pretty huge decisions about structure and organizations to navigate that change. More than 80% of Stack Overflow users want to use AI, or are already using AI for code-related topics, but only 29% of them actually trust AI to do useful work. It's a big contradiction and it's hard to unpack. But Prashanth was willing to get into it with me, and I think you'll find his answers and his insight very interesting. Okay, Prashanth Chandrasekar, CEO of Stack Overflow. Here we go. Prashanth Chandrasekar, you're the CEO of Stack Overflow. Welcome to Decoder.
Yeah, good, wonderful to see you again. It's been, as you said, a hot minute. Three years, I think, is the last time when we spoke. So great to see you again.
I should have said welcome back to Decoder. You were last on the show in October 2022. Yeah. 1 month later, ChatGPT launched.
That was an interestingly timed interview right before the world changed.
Right before the world changed. Software development, certainly the thing that has maybe changed the most since the AI models have hit. There's a lot of new products in your universe to talk about, and there's what Stack Overflow itself is doing in the world of AI. So I want to talk about all of that. But first, just take me back to that moment. We had spent an entire conversation in 2022 talking about the community and moderation, how you were going to build a funnel of people like learning to code, learning to use Stack Overflow. That was a big part of our conversation. The pipeline of engineers both learning to write software and then be a part of the software development community. That was very much on your mind. And then all of software development changed because of the AI tool. So just describe that moment for me, because I think it contextualizes everything that happened afterwards.
It was definitely a very, very surprising moment. I don't think an unexpected moment in many ways, because here comes this technology that obviously some people knew about, but not in a way that obviously captured everybody's imagination using this beautiful interface. I was we were in the middle of wrapping up our calendar year, and at that point it was, here we go. We've got we were thinking about our priorities for the next year. And it pretty much came to, it became very clear, what we needed to focus on, because this is obviously going to be this very, very huge change to how people consume technology. And this is, welcome to technology. It's constantly changing, and things, especially this wave, I think it's completely unprecedented. I don't think there was any sort of analogy or any other sort of prior wave that I could look to, including the cloud and maybe the internet. But I don't think. We're still sort of fully sort of consuming what that is at the moment. But I would say, yeah, so we went into what is the equivalent of a code red situation inside the company. It was an existential moment, especially for our public platform, because the primary, the jobs to be done, if you will, is all around making sure people got answers to their questions. And here you go, you have this really, really slick interface, that natural language interface that allows you to do that, on a moment's notice. So we had to sort of organize our thoughts, and what I ended up doing was carving out 10% of the company's resources to very specifically focus on a response to this. And we set a very specific date to respond by in a meaningful fashion. So we said, hey, the summer of 2023, I was going to go speak at the We Are Developers Conference in Berlin. And I effectively told the company, hey, we've got 6 months to go and produce our response, at least our initial response, because obviously this is going to keep iterating and so on. And that's how we mobilized the company. We had this, we acknowledged it was a code red moment. We carved out a team of 10%, so that was about 40 people or so. So, we're somewhat of a medium-sized company. And then we got to work, and that was the moment.
Take me inside that room. Very few people ever get to send the memo that says it's a code red, right? This is not a thing most people ever get to do. I mean, maybe you think about doing it, but maybe no one's going to read your memo. Everyone has to read your memo. You're the CEO.
Yeah.
Take me inside that room where you say, okay, I have identified an existential threat to our company. People have come to us for answers to software development questions. Again, the last time I was on the show, you were talking about the idea that there were objective right answers to software development questions, and that the community could provide them and vote on them. Well, now you've got a robot that can do it and can do it as much as you want, as long as you want. And now with tools like Cursor, can maybe just do it for you, right? With tools like Claude Code, can maybe just run off and do it for you. Okay, so you've got that. And you say, I need to take 10% of the company. I'm curious how big the company is. I know there's been some changes, but 10% of the company is just 40, 50 people. How did you identify, okay, this is the moment I need to pull these people in the room. I'm making this decision. And the right answer is 40 or 50 people are going to set aside their time to deliver me a plan by the time I give my next keynote?
The instinct to do that was, has come from a couple of different experiences. My experience right before that was at Rackspace, in the cloud services space. And, the business I was actually running at Rackspace was all around how do you respond to Amazon Web Services as a cloud technology threat. I was in the team that was ultimately rebuilt that business from the ground up. And that it was effectively the 10% of Rackspace's population that went and created that. So I had some practice on, what does it mean to see and respond to a disruptive threat that, you're encountering. So so this was my turn now to sort of put that into motion at Stack by appointing somebody like myself at Rackspace when I did it to go do exactly the same thing. The other data point was, if I go all the way back to, a couple of decades ago, or more than a couple of decades ago, when I was in business school, my professor was Clayton Christensen. And he wrote the book Innovator's Dilemma. I go back to that because I have always thought about that in the context of technology, because technology, it is a very consistent theme, leave alone other industries, that every so often you will have disruptive threats. And there's a very specific way in which you need to respond to that. The history suggests that you should carve out an autonomous team that has very different incentives and can pursue things in a very different way relative to the rest of your business. And remember, our company, Stack Overflow, has really two parts. We have our public platform, which had this sort of, this web kind of big disruptor, which we should talk about more broadly about the internet. But then the other side of our business was the enterprise business, where we're serving large companies with our private version of Stack Overflow inside companies. So thankfully, that was, people continue to see value in having a knowledge base that's very accurate. And increasingly over the past few years, it's actually even become more valuable because you need really great context for AI agents and assistants to work. And I've got plenty of examples we could talk about that. So that's where that response came from, really instinctively, is that, I had sort of been through it in a couple different dimensions prior to that. And just in terms of how I communicated to the team, the memo was actually like a series of memos. I mean, in terms of every Friday, I sent a company email. I just sent one right before I got on here. And I am pretty transparent in that here's what's on my mind. Here's what we should be doing. Here's, what some great things that happened. Here's some people that demonstrated core values. So I've done that religiously for, I've been at the company for 6 years. I do that every Friday. So the team basically knows what's on my mind. And so it was, it wasn't like this one big memo, kind of to activate. It was a series of emails leading up to this moment saying, here's what we're going to do. We got to respond to this. Here's what we're thinking about now, and so on and so forth, until it basically I could put the flagpole down and say, hey, by the We Are Developers Conference, we have to produce a meaningful response both on the public platform as well as on our enterprise front, because obviously there's great opportunity now to integrate AI into our SaaS application, because that obviously is a different vector also. So hopefully that helps.
Did you actually type the words code red?
In equivalent, I think I've definitely I used disruptive. I used existential moment. I used all those things, but I don't know if I use exactly the words code red.
I just think about that moment where like, all right, I'm going to hit the C and the O. I'm saying these words. It's happening.
Yeah. We have a very specific communication cadence with the company, obviously, like others. And the tone and the seriousness of what we were working on was very obvious to people, especially when you carve out resources and you take people away from certain teams. People are going to ask, like, wow, like, what about my stuff? And here you go. This is the reason, right? So it becomes very obvious.
How did you make those decisions to pull people away? How did you decide which people? How did you decide which teams?
Certainly, I think this is a hard problem to solve. So you certainly want, I think, very talented people, but I think certain types of people who are willing to break glass or go against the grain and not be sort of encumbered based on historical sort of norms. And so I think I very specifically picked a combination of people. The people who were leading it were more newer people who had come from the outside of the company. Because, remember, we're going through a transformation. I joined a company that was engineering-led in 2019, all about this public platform, and we were transforming into this product-led organization. So we appointed somebody that was, very specifically kind of a newer person who had come from the outside and who was interested in building highly innovative, fast iterating sort of products and had that sort of DNA and had that sort of drive to do it. I also personally stayed much closer to it. I actually, in fact, ran product for an interim period of time myself, with that person reporting directly into me. And so that was another way to sort of stay very, very close to what was happening on the ground until the actual launch. And the rest of the team was a combination of very talented engineers, designers, and some people that had context of how the site worked in the past, who could, provide us with all the unlocks that we needed.
I think about Stack Overflow in probably two reductive of terms in this context. You have inputs, you have outputs. Right, the inputs are users answering questions. The outputs are the answers to those questions when people come and search for them. There's a whole community that makes that system run. The software platform sort of manages that community. Then you've got moderators. But it's really inputs and outputs, right? There's people who are asking questions and people who are answering questions. Both sides of that are deeply affected by AI, right? And I think this comes to the open web part of the conversation where the input side is being flooded by AI-generated slop. And in 2022, you had to ban AI-generated answers in Stack Overflow. And then on the output side, the ability for AI tools to just supply the answers is overwhelming. So let's just break it into two parts. How did you think about the input side, where there's going to be a flood of people saying, I can answer these questions faster than ever by just asking ChatGPT and pasting the answer in, and maybe that's not good enough, but I can just do it. And then how did you think about the output side?
We noticed two things right out of the gate. One was the number of questions that were being asked and answered on Stack went through the roof because people started using, to your point, ChatGPT to answer these questions. And then they were able to, that just sort of fuel this kind of spike, which is kind of counterintuitive. But I think people just felt like, hey, wow, I can game the system, so let me just go do it. And very quickly, we're extremely shrewd and our community members are amazing at sort of figuring out what's real and what's not. And they were able to call out very quickly that these posts were actually ChatGPT generated. And that's kind of what initiated the ban, which we completely supported and still support, by the way. So you still cannot answer any of the questions on Stack Overflow with AI-generated content. And the reason for that, Nile, is because what we have is effectively, our proposition is to be the trusted, vital source for technologies. That's our vision for the company. So for us, it's all about making sure that there are only a few places where you can go, where you're not dealing with AI slop, where you can actually, with a community of experts have actually voted up and curated this in a way that you can trust for various purposes. So on the input side, that it made sense to do that, and we continue to do that. Fast forward a little bit now, I would just say, we have done many, many things to, even though we've had high standards to ask a question on Stack Overflow, now we've created all sorts of new entry points into the site. Our AI Assist feature that we just launched actually in GA earlier this week, which has been super exciting to watch how users are using that, which is effectively an AI conversational interface on our grounded on our 90 million questions and answers. And then the ability for people to ask subjective questions. Going back to our last conversation 3 years ago, now people are able to ask just open-ended questions, and because there's a place for Q&A, which is the canonical answer to a question and so on, but there's also a place for discussion and this conversation, because there's so much changing. So it's not like all the answers have been figured out. So let's actually just make sure that people have an ability to do that, and that's aligned with our mission of cultivating community, which is one of the three parts of our mission. The other one being power learning and unlocking growth. And so we have done all these things to make sure that we're not restrictive on the entry point and the kind of the question asking experience. The other thing that on the answer side, we also realized that it's very important to go wherever the user is spending time. So now that the world has changed and people are in fact using Cursor and GitHub Copilot and anything else to write their code, again, our goal is to be the vital source for technology. So let's show up wherever our users are. So we've actually become a lot more headless. More recently, we've launched, for example, MCP servers for both our public platform as well as our enterprise product. And so what people are using our platform to do now is not only invoke those MCP servers, let's say from a cursor when they're writing code and say, what's the difference between version 1 and version 2, but also to be able to write back, which is very unique in the industry, to write back to our platform straight from cursor if they want to sort of engage on sort of getting a deeper answer and so on. And so that's been our product principle, just go anywhere where the user is. But ultimately, we just want to be the source, whether it's inside companies or outside companies, to be that trustworthy, vital source for technologists.
How do you monetize in a world where you're headless, right? Where you're just another database that someone's querying from Cursor? How does that make you money?
So our enterprise business, as I mentioned, is our what we call Stack Internal, which is now used by 25,000 companies around the world. Some of the world's largest organizations, banks, tech companies, retail companies use this product to be able to share knowledge internally. And now increasingly, they're able to use that trustworthy knowledge to power their AI assistants and AI agents to go do various things. A good example of this is Uber, who has something called Uber Genie that is a customer of ours, and with Stack Overflow Internal, there are thousands of questions and answers on our platform. Uber Genie plugs into that content through our APIs, and then it's able to go into things like Slack channels and automatically answer questions and drives up productivity that way. So you're not bothering people, right? So it's rooted in the context that's in the organization's knowledge on our platform. That's our primary business, the enterprise business. The second business, which we actually built only over the past couple of years, is our data licensing business. So one of the things that we also noticed was that a lot of the companies that the AI labs were obviously leveraging our data for LLM pre-training and post-training needs and RAG and indexing. We put up a whole bunch of anti-scrapers. We worked with third-party companies, and we did that. And very quickly, we got calls from a lot of them saying, "Hey, we need access to your data. Let's work together to formally get access." And so we've had to do that, and now we've struck effectively partnership agreements with every single AI lab that you can think of, for the most part, a cloud hyperscaler that you can think of, companies like Google, OpenAI, all these folks, and even partnerships with a long tail of the Databricks, Snowflakes, some of the more kind of on the secondary point, even though they're not doing LLM pre-training. And that's been our second business more recently. And the third one, which is the smallest part of our company, is advertising. So I think most people assume that Stack Overflow is supported entirely by advertising, but it's only about 20% of our company's revenues. And we have, again, a very captive, very important audience of developers who do spend time on the site. And so we have, large advertisers that want to get their attention on various products. And in fact, now is a time when there's a lot of competition. So they want to do that increasingly. So that's how we make money. So in the context of becoming headless, for us, it's about our enterprise product is it just works on a subscription and kind of hybrid pricing. So that's how we make money there. The data licensing is similar, and that if they want people on access, they got to pay for that. And then, yes, advertising is limited to some of the largest companies, and they pay us for that. But there's always going to be, I would say it's an and versus an or, right? We're not going to be completely headless. I think we just want to give the user the option to be headless. Plenty of people still come to the site. And so in that case, we're able to balance that out with this mechanism.
Do you think new users are going to come to Stack Overflow? Stack Overflow is a product of the mobile era, right? There's an explosion of software development. There's an explosion of community. There's a culture and the value of building apps and services, and there's new tools. Stack Overflow is one of the central points of gathering for that community in that era. New developers today might just open Claude Code or Cursor or GitHub or whatever and just talk to that and never actually venture out into a community in that way. Do you think you can get people to come to Stack Overflow directly and seek out answers from other people, or are they just going to talk to the AIs?
I think that for simple questions, by the way, when we saw the decline in questions early on in 2023, what we realized is that pretty much all the question declines had to do with very simple questions. Complex questions absolutely still get asked on Stack because there's no other place. If the LLMs are only as good as the data, which is typically human curated, and we're one of the best places for that, if not the best for technology. It's still a very active site, a lot of engagement, a lot of monthly active usage, and the questions being asked are quite, I would say they're advanced questions, but what we're also increasingly seeing through our new mechanisms that we've opened up, because we want to answer your question, we want to give people other reasons to come to the site other than just getting their answers. So we have had to broaden our site's purpose, and hence the mission of cultivate community, power learning, and unlock growth. So what we've done with those things is let's open up new entry points, new ways for people to engage. So we even, in fact, for example, Nile, unlocked the ability for humans to chat with each other to get directional guidance. So that's been a very, very popular feature on the site where people are engaging with other experts. So we have, for example, people asking OpenAI API questions as an example, and they can go into the OpenAI chat room and be able to engage with other people having, that have similar questions as an example, or Python experts as an example. We also opened up ability for people to get demonstrate their knowledge by opening up challenges. So we, effectively like hackathons, that's another idea that we've got where we've opened up a whole bunch of series of challenges. Very popular feature now. People spend time to go and solve these challenges that we post. And then that way it can accrues to their ability to showcase their understanding of the fundamentals, which I think is very important in terms of the world, where the world is going. Because if people are just using vibe coding tools and cogen tools, I think companies that are bringing in young talent ultimately have to know that they're relying on the people who not only took the shortcut, but also understand the fundamentals. And so we're one of the few places where you can actually prove that you've actually learned the fundamentals. So that's the other reason why we've opened up these new mechanisms. And then the third part of the mission, which is unlocking growth, is we also want to enable people. There's going to be a lot of job disruption as a function of all this. And the people's jobs are going to change quite dramatically, junior developer jobs, even though I think it's a short-sighted move by many companies to stop hiring them, considering you need a pipeline. Those people are going to need a home. They're going to need to connect with other people to be able to sort of progress and learn and get jobs. And so jobs is a very important part. We struck a partnership with Indeed this past year so that they, partner on tech jobs. So it's just to broaden the scope of our site so that there are many other reasons other than asking the question, which they will still do, but we want to give them more reasons to come to the site also.
This comes, I think, to the big tension in all of this. And I see it playing out on all kinds of different communities. I see it playing out in our own comments in a lot of ways. You want to build a community of people who are helping other people get better, and that is being disrupted on every side by AI. Yeah. And communities that are built around people are pretty resistant to the incursion of AI. This has definitely happened on Stack Overflow. Your moderators have essentially revolted over the ability to remove AI-generated answers as fast as they want to. When you partnered with OpenAI, a bunch of users started deleting content so it wouldn't be fed into OpenAI for training, and you had to ban a bunch of them. How are you managing that balance? Because if you build communities around people, I would say right now anyway, the culture is those communities will push back against AI very hard.
It's I would say one of the most important things that we've focused on, and I've spent time on over the past few years, is this whole push and pull, as you describe it, of like, how do we think about AI in the context of our site? Because it's pretty clear to us and to me that, if we don't modernize the site in the context of us leveraging AI as an entry point, et cetera, that it's going to be less relevant over time. And so that's not good. So we've taken a very aggressive stance by incorporating AI into the public platform now with AI Assist, as I mentioned, which has been fantastic to see. And I'll walk you through the decision on why we did that. And then same thing on the enterprise side. There's definitely, if I think about the user base at Stack Overflow, it's kind of like a big nation, right? Like we've got 100 million people. And there's definitely, people on both sides of the spectrum. What's interesting is that there is we have something called a 1-9-90 rule. 1% are the hardcore users who have been spending a lot of time, with their blood, sweat, and tears, curating knowledge, spending their time on the site, et cetera, contributing. 9% doing it in a medium way, and then 90% sort of consuming and mostly being a lurker on the site. And the distribution on the site, and when we ask people on whether or not they're using AI, our own surveys basically say, if we took a look at the Stack Overflow 2025 survey, over 80% of our community members are using AI or intend to use AI. 80%, right? But the trust level on that answer on when they're using AI is only about 29%. Only 29% of our user base actually trusts what's coming out of AI, which is actually quite appropriate considering where we are, because there should be skepticism of this new technology. So there's enthusiasm to try it, but not to fully trust it. And with this 1-9-90 rule, I think what we have is we have a core group of users that are always going to be the protectors of the original mission of the company, which was to create this kind of knowledge base that was completely accurate and do nothing more than just that. And then we have a very large number of people who are, let's say, younger developers, the next generation of developers who are looking to leverage the latest and greatest of tools. And it's very clear to us, based on surveys that we've done and additional research, that they want to use natural language as the interface to be able to do this. It is the most meaningful seed shift sort of change in terms of, computer science development. If you look back to all the way, to, even object-oriented programming many, many decades ago, that wasn't such a huge boom, actually. Like, it didn't actually create the step change. But now we're in this moment where everything's been unlocked. So I think it's a huge change effort, and we've had to sort of decide that, hey, we've got to be able to respect the original mission, keep accuracy at the heart of it. And so we're not comfortable with using, for example, AI for answers, because it will generate slop, because it hallucinates, and that's hence the trust score is low. But why don't we incorporate natural language interfaces so that's the preferred way to sort of engage? And so we ended up doing that, both on the public side as well as on the enterprise side of the house. And that's been really well received by the vast majority of users. But there will be always a vocal minority that will push back against incorporation of this, because there's a lot of, not beyond just the site, there's just a level of, I think, broader concern about what all this does to jobs. And if we let the, cat out of the bag, then what's going to happen? So I think there's that obviously concern also, which is understandable.
Let me put a pretty fine point on that. I think I understand that in a maybe a sharper way. If I am somebody who, in your 1%, who spent a lot of time on Stack Overflow, helping other people, and the reason I answer questions for free on your platform, which you monetize in lots of ways, is because I can directly see that my effort helps other people grow, and I'm helping other people solve problems. That is one very self-contained dynamic.
Yeah.
The last time you were on the show, our entire conversation was about that dynamic.
Yes.
Right. And how you got people to participate in that dynamic and the value of that dynamic. And then suddenly there's a very clear economic benefit to the company that owns the database, because they're selling my effort to OpenAI, right? Which is a thing that is happening across the board. Right, we're gonna do all these data licensing deals with all these AI providers. They're gonna train on the answers that I have painstakingly entered into this database to help other people. And now the next generation of software engineers is gonna get autocomplete that's based on my work, and I've gotten nothing. I mean, I've heard that from lots and lots of people. Yeah. Right? I've heard that in our own community. I think I have felt that as various media companies have made these deals.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that? Because that feels like what you were providing was a database that you had to monetize in some ways, but the interaction that the people had was the value. And now there's another kind of economic value that is maybe overshadowing it or recasting or recharacterizing the interaction that the people have.
There are a couple of points there. One is, I think if you think about the original DNA of this company and why people came together to do this thing, when I joined the company, I asked a question like, what's people's incentive to spend time doing this? And I asked the founders, specifically Joel Spolsky, about this. And his point is that the software development community is effectively, it's a very altruistic. People just want to help each other out, because people understand how frustrating. I used to write code many years ago. I recently picked it back up with, some of the code gen tools, which is interesting to compare and contrast. But I just remember how frustrating it was if you get stuck on something. And so Stack was obviously a huge boon when it was created to unlock this. And so it was truly out of that. That was the reason. We also asked the question, like, should we, even before ChatGPT, should we incentivize users by paying them for that? Should we give them a monetary benefit? And that wasn't like a high ask by our user base. We went and researched people. So people were not in for the money. Plus, it complicates things, because how do you judge the payment for a particular JavaScript question relative to a particular Python question? It's just a very, very, it goes down a rabbit hole, which is, I think, a kind of a sort of a untenable sort of rabbit hole. And so this commercial aspect, so that's one. So what is the original, reason why people got together? And it was about the mission. Secondly, in terms of, like, I think why we have to do this, and is it unfair and so on. The primary reason why we have to go down this data licensing route, or why we've had to do it, is because the model of the internet has literally has been turned upside down. People relied on, and I know you talk about this, Nile, with the DoorDash problem. I think the model of the internet has literally, where people are, go to search engines and go to, websites, and, you monetize off of ads. That is completely, I really empathize with, content sites that are heavily dependent on advertising, because I think most content sites, their traffic is down 30, 40%, something like that. So with this huge seed shift, and where companies that support these platforms have to ultimately, we're a business ultimately. So what do we have to do? We have to do what is necessary to adopt a new business model to survive and thrive and do all the things. And so thankfully for us, we've had an enterprise business, which is independent of all of this. Thankfully for us, we were now able to, we still had the advertising business for large advertisers still cared about this, our community. And so data licensing only felt right in terms of making sure that we can effectively capitalize on the moment, plus also be able to invest back into our community so that people who are there for the right reasons saw the benefits of that. So we've invested with all these new features I just mentioned, whether that is all these new content types with challenges or chat or AI assist or any of these things all takes resources to go and build. And so we've had to go and we leverage these funds that we received to be able to go do that. Now, in the future, we may consider other ways to make it, for example, should we pay our users, give them a piece of the data licensing revenues? Perhaps, we'll ask that question always. There's always ways for us to continue, but right now, this is the current setup that we have.
You mentioned to get to the data licensing deals, you had to put up a bunch of anti-scraper tools. You had to go, into secondary and tertiary layers of the stack to get deals from Databricks and other kinds of providers. The AI companies, they were just scraping your site before, right? They probably still are. Like whether or not they're paying you, they're probably still just going through the front door because all of them appear to be doing that. Did you have to say, we're stopping you and then go get the deal? Or did you say, hey, we know you're doing this, but you have to pay us or we're going to start litigating?
Somewhere in between, I would say. I think we put up the anti-scrapers very quickly. We even sort of changed the way in which people received our data dumps. And, because we want, again, there's a balance because we never wanted to prevent our community users from grabbing our data for their legitimate needs, for them to do their school projects or PhD theses or anything like that. So we've continued to be open about our data for our community members, but they have to be community members and there can be companies looking to commercialize off the data. So we were very specific about the policy terms, putting up technology that prevented people from grabbing it. So we know exactly who is scraping, who is not scraping. Some parts of those were outreach to those folks to say, look, stand down because you're obviously putting up even pressure. You're putting a lot of pressure on the servers by doing what you're doing. So take it easy.
But I think my characterization of those companies is they don't care, or some of them care and they want to be good citizens, and some of them absolutely do not care and they would prefer the smoke. You can just categorize them. There's a reason Amazon is suing Perplexity. Like they told Perplexity to stop it, and Perplexity won't. As we're speaking today, this morning, the New York Times is suing Perplexity. Then there are other players who are acting in different ways and they're striking different kinds of deals. Walk me through one of those deals. When you went and struck your deal with OpenAI, was it, we're going to stop you, and if you want the door to be open again, you have to pay us? Or was it, this is wrong, we can take all the technical and legal measures, but we should actually just get to the deal correctly? Like, walk me through that conversation.
With some folks like them, we were already, we were incorporating something like OpenAI into our product. Remember the Code Red situation where we were about to announce our AI response. So we were actually using that technology to do what we had to do to incorporate AI into the public platform as well as our enterprise product. So we had a relationship with them. And we also said, look, this is not going to work. It's not tenable. And this is the new way of working. And so meaning we need a new arrangement, a business arrangement for you to use the data. And so let's actually have a conversation. And to credit to them, they were very partner-centric around that. I was very impressed by both OpenAI and companies like Google, who are all very open to engaging on this topic and wanted to be responsible AI partners. They got it immediately, even before we asked them. It wasn't like this kind of big, let's go have this conversation kind of from the ground up and justify why it had to be done. We just said, look, this is what needs to happen because it's a new business model. And we got into the conversation pretty quickly in that, okay, let's actually have a constructive way to, what exactly are you looking for? Which format of data do you want to scrape the content? Do you want bulk uploads? Do you want API calls? What do you want? So we got into that whole mix. And then, of course, there is the conversation around, and these are recurring, just mind you, Nilesh, that these are recurring revenue type of deals, that these are not one-time, payments. So yes, it was. They were very great, very collaborative partners. But you're right, there are players who, they're contradictory. They say something, and their actions, I think, prove other things. In terms of how they've engaged. And so there are people that are holdouts for sure. People that are not exactly consistent with their word, and that's unfortunate. And I think every company like us has to decide what we do about that. And we're in various stages of these conversations with various people on how to make sure that we ostensibly get them to sort of do the right thing.
Now you have to name one of those companies. Who do you think is holding out differently than their public posture?
I'd rather not be specific, but I think you've actually characterized all the usual suspects that you're covering are the usual suspects that we are encountering. Is how I would put that. Yes.
Let me ask you about the recurring revenue piece, and then I want to get into the Decoder questions because I think they'll be illuminating after this conversation. There's a sense, right, that we've done all the pre-training that we're going to do, right? That scraping the internet is not the future of these models. That there needs to be some other leap. Stack Overflow's existing corpus of information is the valuable thing, right? There's a lot of information. There's 20 years of stuff in that database. What's the value of you have to pay us again to train the next version of Gemini or GPT, and the value of there's incremental information being added to the existing database? Because that seems like a clear split to me.
The way that we have thought about this is that, every model that's being trained, you're training it on some corpus of information. You're going from GPT X to Y. And so in the new model that you're training, if you're leveraging our original data or some derivative of that from a prior model, then you have to pay us for it. That's effectively the legal requirement to be able to do that. And so it's a cumulative aspect, right? So let's not forget that. And so people have to pay for the cumulative data. It's not just the fact that it was used back in the day. And yes, obviously, relative to 20 years, 1 year's worth of information is going to be less, but that's why you're getting 20 plus 1. That's the idea. And so that's just the way the legal agreement has been set up.
Is it per year? Is it every year's worth of data is a chunk of money, or how does that work?
No, it's a cumulative. It's like the whole corpus, past, historical data as well as the anything that's going forward for the following year. All that is sort of one accumulated sort of data set, and that's charged as one effectively.
But that doesn't. So this year's data doesn't get pulled into the training set for Gemini 3, which just came out, right? Every new question and answer in Stack Overflow since Gemini 3 has come out is not incorporated in Gemini 3's training. So you're kind of betting that they're just going to train ever bigger models.
That's right.
Is that how it's structured in your mind?
Yeah, and some companies have asked, they've asked for very, very they're wide use cases. There's pre-training use cases. There are even beyond that. You can leverage the data in many, many different ways for AI and non-AI use cases, search use cases, and so on. But correct, I think that there may be scenarios where more larger models are built, and our data is going to be useful for those scenarios. But there's going to be RAG indexing. There's going to be post-training needs. There's going to be all sorts of scenarios, and it's quite interesting to see some of the frontier labs ask for very specific slices of data that they find it to be, find very useful. And we're able to remember we've got a lot of, there's not only just the question and answer, but we've got the comment history, we've got the metadata history, we've got, the voting history, we've got the user A has gone down this path history. So it's a lot of excellent context for things like reasoning, and to really sort of be able to be useful to really mimic the human brain. It's effectively one human brain that's been documented almost.
This, I think, brings me to the Decoder questions. You've restructured the company. There's been some rounds of layoffs. You've obviously refocused on the SaaS business in a real way. I think we should talk about that. But the idea that we're going to train ever bigger models and that will be the growing part of the business versus we might just want some slices versus it's actually retrieval augmented generation or RAG that's going to be the future for a lot of these other businesses. You would make different decisions based on which one of those is going to grow faster. And I don't think anybody knows.
Correct.
Maybe you can tell me if you know or you know someone who knows, but we're in a very nascent period for all of this kind of development. How have you structured the company to even out all of that risk and be prepared for how do people actually need the data in the future? Because I don't. Maybe you know, but I don't think I know.
Yeah, it's hard to predict clearly, and also who knows. We've got some brilliant minds like the Demis Haspis at Google and others who are coming up with the next generation leap of whatever the equivalent of transformer technology is to keep going towards this ultimate goal that they're all pursuing, which is AGI. So yes, you're right. It's hard to know exactly what shows up and when. However, the way we're structured as a company is effectively two parts, Anile. So the one part is the enterprise business. So we have a product team, engineering team. We have obviously a go-to-market team focused on that. And that's very, very clear, the enterprise products business. And then the other side of the house is what we call the community products side of the house. And the community products team focuses on the public platform, all the features that we talked about so far, AI Assist and all the subjective new questions and chat and all these things. And there's the community side. And the data licensing business sits in that group. And so that they are obviously tied to the the kind of the engagement on the site. And so there's a kind of a virtuous cycle there. So that's how we're split. And that includes, again, product resources, a small go-to-market team, engineering folks, et cetera. So that's, and then I've also a community management team, which spends a lot of time with the moderators, et cetera, to engage there. So it's split down the middle. And of course, our other functions support both.
How big is Stack Overflow today? I know you laid off almost a quarter of the company in 2023 because of traffic declines. You've built other businesses. How big are you today?
We are about 300 people or so.
And do you think the revenue you're going to see from data licensing or your SaaS business is going to allow you to grow again?
We believe so, yeah. We're a growing company. We're profitable. So, financially, we're thankfully in a very good spot. And now it's all about placing bets on the highest growth opportunities. And we believe creating this knowledge intelligence layer inside the enterprise through our Stack internal product is a phenomenal growth opportunity because customers are pulling us in that direction, which is fantastic to see. So
that's where you're headed. Those are some announcements. I do want to wrap up by talking about those. I'm just focused on the future is the SaaS business for enterprise. The future is data licensing. Are you still seeing declines on the public website?
I would say it's been stabilized for a few months. So I think the engagement and the activity on the site are actually pretty stable. The drop in questions that I was mentioning previously were all the simple questions, and it seems to be now has sort of come to a place where it is, the complex questions are being asked. We have a consistent number of people on the site every day. We have something called a heartbeat. In fact, anybody can go check it out. There's always, if you go to stackoverflow.com, you'll see it at the bottom how many users are online at the moment, sort of thing. And so you'll always see a very consistent number there. So that's I think it's hard to know how to predict the future, but certainly I think the worst of it was back in 23, 24 for sure.
The question I ask everybody in Decoder, as you well know, is how do you make decisions? The last time you were on the show, you said that you wanted to be on the front lines as much as possible, and you wanted to be informed by people who are on the ground. Has that changed in the past 3 years? What's your decision-making process?
Yeah, not really. I think it's very important for leaders and people like CEOs, et cetera, to have the full context because these decisions cannot be you can't have filtered information. So I spend a lot of time with users, a lot of time with customers, really understanding what they care about. And that's how we've even decided, even something like as controversial as the AI Assist feature to our conversation, it wasn't obvious if you were not listening up to the ground to say, let's go and build that. Because if you just listen to the headline statements, it seems like, hey, people don't want to integrate AI into Stack Overflow. But the reality is that many users, the 90% I was mentioning, wanted a natural language interface. That's what they are comfortable using these days, and that's what they wanted. So that's why we decided to do that.
One of the things that I see everywhere is that split. You mentioned it before, 1-990, right? There's a very vocal minority. We see it in our own traffic on The Verge. We cover AI deeply. We are told that everyone hates it. I understand why. I understand the comments. That's what I'll say. I get it. And then I see the usage numbers. I see the traffic on our coverage of AI tools. I see companies like yours saying everyone's using it. And there's some gigantic split there that is unlike any other split I think I've ever encountered in covering technology for the last 15 years, where everyone says they don't like it and then they're using the hell out of it.
Yeah.
The only other one I can think of that is lightly comparable is how people feel about Adobe. Everyone uses the tools and everyone's mad at the Creative Cloud subscription fee. It's basically the only comparison I have.
Yeah.
It's not a good one. It doesn't map one-to-one, but it's as close as I've come to that split. What in your mind accounts for that split with AI, where people don't like it, they're very vocal about not liking it, and then we see the numbers and everyone's kind of using it anyway?
I think it comes down to that data point I shared earlier, which is that 80+% of our user base wants to use AI or are already using AI for code-related topics, but only 29% of that population trusts AI. And trust is a very deep word. It's like, kind of like, why don't you trust something? You don't trust something because you don't think it's producing high integrity answers, accurate answers. You may not trust it because it may replace you one day, and you don't like that either. So, but at the same time, you're obviously going to be curious on what is this force that's going to be such a tectonic force, and so you want to keep trying it and using it, and perhaps getting better, and ultimately, hopefully, leveraging it to your benefit in a way that you can be relevant as an individual developer in the future, able to go a lot faster and so on. So, I think that's probably the reason, because I think especially the developer audience, I think they're very discerning, a kind of a, let's say, analytical audience, and they can be prickly if things are not, let's say, deterministic, right, the way it has been for a very long time. And so this is a very probabilistic sort of technology. So the fact that it's almost like, going to a casino and using a roulette wheel, you're going to get a different answer every time. It's not necessarily comforting for somebody who's writing very, very specific code, looking for very specific outcomes. And I think people will get used to that over time. It is a mind shift change for people writing software. And that may be the reason that why people are intrigued, because it is so powerful as a technology. Don't get me wrong. We use vibe coding all over the place at Stack, right? All the features I mentioned to you, our designers and our product managers vibe coded it first to show it and get user feedback before we went and built it. So we've embraced these tools internally for their benefit. So there will be ways in which you feel comfortable using it, but still, I think that's the core reason.
I actually want to talk about that dependency, right? You know that it's not trustworthy, but you are building products with it. You are building products to enable it. You've mentioned it several times. The big announcement this week is Stack Overflow AI Assist. You've talked about it several times throughout this conversation. You're betting that this is what people want, right? You're betting that an AI-powered tool on Stack Overflow will help more people, and then maybe that thing is going to hallucinate like crazy and give people the wrong answer. How do you make that bet when you know that the users don't trust it, but you still have to roll out the tools because that's where the industry is going?
We believe we've actually unlocked a very important aspect of that trust issue, which is and responding to it by our AI Assist feature provides, it's a RAG plus LLM solution. So effectively, it provides an answer that first goes out into our corpus of information of tens of millions of questions and answers. We have 80 to 90 million, and those are first used to produce a response. And then if they don't, then there's a fallback option where it goes and leverages OpenAI, for example, who's our partner, to be able to go and produce trustworthy knowledge from other parts of the web. And so it's first searching through our trusted attributed knowledge base. It produces the links so people can go down that path and learn more about it. And so which is very important to us, right? Attribution and so on. And so that's how we are navigating this element of hallucinations, and we're constantly testing it. And it's not perfect, right? There will always be improvements, but we're also looking at where the world's headed. And if these models continue to get better, then we should benefit from those improvements. And ultimately, we should have the best solution, because you've got grounded human context plus the LLM strengths as well.
I think the thing that I'm most interested in is the faith that the models will continue to get better. I'm not 100% sure that's true. I'm not sure that LLM technology as a core technology can actually be intelligent. As you're saying, people are very attracted to the natural language component of these models and the interface shift that's happening. The platform shift that we're all going to develop software with natural language or let the LLMs reason, basically self-prompt themselves into an answer, right? There's something there that seems risky. Are you perceiving that risk today? Are you factoring that in, or are you saying this is where we're at now and we have to continue until something changes?
I think the first thing around the improvement on the LLM, let's call it plane, I'm with you, right? Like, it's hard to know how things are going to improve when you just think that, okay, it's plateaued. When you thought about the past 6 months, boom, here comes Gemini 3. And again, we're proud partners of Google. And here we go. It is a seed shift. It blows every other model out of the water. And now we've got a code red situation in other companies, other LLM competitors. So it's everybody's
Sam Altman did type the words code red, by the way. I want to be that's
Yes.
very good.
Perhaps that was the way for me to go back in the day. But I would say, but the point being that is that. So it is surprising that you're able to produce that sort of a leap when seemingly things have plateaued. So I don't know. I can't predict that, right? Because these folks are deep in the subject, Demis and others. And so that's true, but there's also going to be other, I'm sure, innovations that we are not even privy to. Like I was explaining previously, like if, transformers were obviously a huge development in this space, there may be something that these AI research labs come up with that we're not even aware of that's going to be ultimately pushing things. Ultimately, we know that the compounding effects are very real. We've got unlimited compute, you've got extremely powerful chips and GPUs that are now even lowering their costs. And I was at AWS reInvent this week where they talked about the Trainium chips, Trainium 3 and Trainium 4 being built out. So there's going to be just the proliferation of these and then you got access to data that what we've already talked about. And so these things, when they combine and compound together, it's going to produce very magical outcomes. So I think that's the belief and why it's rooted. Why my own assumptions are rooted in the fact that it's going to improve.
The split, and the reason I'm asking about this in the context of the tools you're building and everyone using it and only 29% of people trusting it, is you've got to bring that number way up to reach the returns that every company investing in AI is trying to reach, including yours. I don't know if the core technology can do that. I don't know if you can stack a bunch of technologies to do that. But I do know that one version of the future of software development looks like everything is vibe coding all the time.
Right.
Another version of the future of software development looks like writing intensely long prompts for models that are pages and pages themselves, which seems ridiculous to me, but maybe that is the future. And another version looks like, we return to humans at the cutting edge of software development, and they are co-developing with an AI model and then maybe asking Stack. And that feels like a richer, more interesting future, but it's unclear to me where we are on that spectrum or how that even plays out.
We obviously have not only a bird's eye view in the context of our public community with this 29% data point as an example, but our enterprise customers give us a clear view on where they are, right? Because the ROI questions being asked very heavily inside companies. And clearly, I think the 2026 is going to be the year of rationalization. If 2025 was the year of agents, at least, where every tool is being tried out inside these companies, there's a very open landscape for CTOs to go and buy various tools, test various tools, and so I think it's been a tremendous time for some of the companies building these tools. But 26, the CFO pressure with, hey, look, okay, these productivity improvements have to come from these. We're going to hire less people as annual planning happens. There's going to be tremendous pressure in the system to prove out what the real value is. Everybody at a senior level that I've talked to acknowledges that this is a big shift, and they all are leaning into it pretty hard. They're all waiting for the improvements. I think most companies will say that they have seen improvements in the small groups where they've tested these tools, but that's a sort of a self-selecting group because they're the enthusiasts and so on, and they will see great productivity gains, which is probably true. But there's an absolute drop-off in productivity as you think about the adoption across the enterprise, and probably for the same reasons, by the way. You're telling employees to use tools which may put them out of a job, so why would they want to do it? Or more fundamentally, if these tools are not perfect and they're hallucinating and they're going to be held accountable, then that's not good either. So and then of course, as the process changed, the mindset changed, the ability, you have to completely change the workflows of how you work, all the enterprise change management work, which is why our solution, which is Stack Internal, is building this human curation layer, a knowledge intelligence layer, so that you can, with the MCP server on top of it, the knowledge base in the middle, and then our ability to ingest knowledge from other parts of the company to create these atomic Q&A that are extremely helpful to root your enterprise knowledge in through these AI agents. That is that solution that's why we've gone hard at producing that. And we've seen a really, really strong response from our customers. We have some of the world's largest companies, leveraging and testing and building this with us. HP and Eli Lilly and all these companies, Xerox. And so it's been amazing to see them gravitate to us because they want to fulfill that ROI point that you're making,
Yeah.
which is, and what are the gaps? It's trust again. And so they want this trust layer through a company like Stack that they can actually insert in between their data as well as their AI tools.
When you say the age of rationalization, what I hear is you think the bubble's going to pop in 2026.
Yeah, I think certainly the exuberance in just trying out various tools and unlimited budgets on this AI budget, I think will ultimately it'll come to roost. I'm not sure about the bubble bursting. Like I think there's definitely going to be corrections along the way. There's no question about it. That is like if you look at history, but the number of vendors that are selling into these companies, what I'm very surprised by is that there's similar functionality. There's 4 of them being tested within these companies.
Yeah.
So certainly all these companies may have received whatever they've got to 100 million in ARR, but at some point there's going to be churn when the CTO decides, you know what, I'm only going to use maybe one and maybe a second one as a backup. No different from the cloud. If you think of the multi-cloud world back in the day, people didn't have 3 clouds out of the gates. I mean, now you have maybe one primary cloud and one secondary cloud. But this is different, but at the same time, I don't think you're going to have like 4 different vibe coding tools, in my opinion.
When you think about Stack Overflow as being the trust layer, right? I mean, that's the value add. That's what maybe you can charge a premium for it over time. You're still dependent on a tool that only 29% of your users trust. How do you, and I know you're talking about RAG and your other systems for doing that. How do you think you bring that number up with Stack Overflow? Is that possible for you to do, or is that the ecosystem has to do it for you?
I think it's an ecosystem point, more generally speaking, because that is more a reflection of people's, what they have access to beyond Stack, right? They've got access to all these other options, and so what we can focus on is being the most vital source for technologists. And so for us, it's about making sure this content is excellent, it's high quality, but also it's a great place for people to again cultivate community, connect with each other, learn, and grow in their careers. But I think the way in which we can do it is through the fact that we're working with all these big AI labs, and the fact that our trustworthy knowledge that's been human curated painstakingly is going to flow into these LLMs, which ultimately produce trustworthy answers. So we're sort of one layer behind, but that's I think where we operate. We operate in that trust layer or the data layer, if you will, in the context of LLMs. So that's our indirect contribution to that 29%.
Prashanth, this has been a great conversation. You're going to have to come back sooner than 3 years next time. What's next for Stack Overflow? What should people be looking for?
Our biggest focus is going to be making sure that we build this enterprise knowledge intelligence layer for companies to truly use AI agents in a trustworthy way. So, our Stack internal product that we launched a couple of weeks ago at Microsoft Ignite, in fact, is very, very excited about that on the enterprise side. As well as, of course, on the public platform, as I've mentioned throughout, to help our community users connect with each other, really learn, as well as grow their careers. And there are going to be so many avenues and new entry points like our AI Assist and our subjective content and chat and other things that people hopefully find very useful as things change around them very rapidly. And, they can be part of this amazing community and help each other out. So those are the 2 focuses, enterprise as well as our public community.
All right. Well, when the bubble pops next year, we're gonna have you come back and you're going to say you predicted it.
Thank you, Nile. I appreciate it.
I'd like to thank Prashanth for joining me on Decoder, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to let us know what you thought about this episode or really anything else at all, drop us a line. You can email us at decoder@theverge.com. We really do read all the emails. You can also hit me up on Threads or Blue Sky. If you like Decoder, please share with your friends and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Decoder is a production of The Verge and part of the Vox Media Podcast Network. We'll see you next time.